What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in and watching my channel. First of all, we're going to be talking about finances today, especially when it comes to finances between or amongst a couple. If you're going to be getting married soon, or if you're already married or already hooked up and you want to dive in more depth of finances because it is important, I recommend you watching this today. So, to begin, I have been married for 2.5 years now and very happily married. We already have a baby girl that is almost 6 months old. So we jumped the gun real quick. We got engaged when we were only 6 months together of actually knowing each other, not even just dating and we knew each other from back then. No, like we had just met and 6 months later, it was like, hey, do you want to get married? Let's do it. And here we are. So maybe your case is different, and I'm sure it is very different from mine. Maybe you've been dating longer, or you've been already in a relationship for a very long time, married, whatever. But it is important to cover the topic of finances because the number one reason for divorce is finances. And it's a very touchy subject. I know that it's hard to just ask somebody like, hey, how much do you make? How do you handle your expenses, credit score and all that stuff? I know it's very touchy stuff. Nobody really wants to share like their private information, especially if, you know, you're just dating but it is a very necessary topic. So we can prevent a lot of bumps in the road. We'll just call them that. So I'll give you some examples of what I had done that have helped for me. And we did make mistakes. I'm just going to let you know that even though I thought I covered everything, there was still a lot of things that came up while we were married. And it is important to know that you're probably not going to be able to cover everything before you get married. One of the first things that we would do is we would go to a Starbucks and we would take a notebook and start talking about, okay, so we know we want to get married and we want to live our life together and we want to try not to kill each other as much as possible. So it is important to understand this. And we would ask each other, how much do you earn at your job? Now, believe it or not, there's a lot of people that do not know the answer to this. There are people that just say, well, I get paid minimum wage, or I earn 15 bucks an hour, 20 bucks an hour. But when it comes to knowing their gross, their net, they have no clue. And so those are numbers that you should know right off the bat. And if you don't know them, do your homework and go look at your pay stub. And if you don't get a pay stub, go to your payroll accountant, whoever does payroll for you guys, and ask them for these stubs because you do want to know the consistency or how much you're earning a month or every 2 weeks, however it is that you get paid. Eventually knowing what is your year to date. So when I did this with my now husband, Mario, we sat down again at that Starbucks and we were super hyped. We're like, all right, let's go through these numbers. And we jotted down everything, overtime or how many hours he was working, how many hours I was working. And once we knew how much he was earning and how much I was earning, we went through expenses. And there are those expenses that are necessities, right? And there are expenses that are just wants. And you have to be able to identify those two as well. It is very important because God knows, before I was married, I had expenses to the roof. And a lot of those expenses were just wants. It was like, you know, just shopping to go buy shoes and clothing. And I mean, literally everything was food, clothing, entertainment for me. Besides my bills, but a bigger chunk was entertainment and clothing. And so that was a bit of a problem because I was always coming off short. So, you know, I'll start from the top and we would write, what are our monthly bills? So, you know, whether it's your phone bill, your rent, your car note, your car insurance, health insurance, It was a list of things, right? Because your necessities and your bills are going to be different from mine. And so we went through all of those for me. I had a huge list of bills that I had to pay every single month. I had a water machine that I had just purchased, and I had like all of these expenses and bills that were like a must to pay every single month, and I could not come up short. So when it came to him, I noticed that his income was a lot lower, and yet his expenses were a lot lower than mine, where my income was way higher, and again, expenses super high. So we were able to identify that and set it on paper. And it was kind of a fun thing, but it was kind of scary, and like there's probably, you have to be super open about this. You can't be afraid. You can't hide anything, because if there's something that you're hiding and you're like, I probably shouldn't tell them that I have a bill for this, or that I owe for this, or this is how much I pay for my car note. I know it can be intimidating, but it's things that you do need to cover. Transparency is so key when it comes to finances, especially when you're joining somebody in a marriage and you're like, okay, we got to make this work. Because trust me, there will be issues in your finances that will affect your marriage, that will affect, those discussions. And so they are important to cover as soon as possible. So again, once we went through that and we knew how much we were getting paid and what our expenses were, then we were like, okay, how much money do we spend on our wants? Because now we know what our needs are, and those are the bills that got to get paid. This is how much money we have left. So if I was getting paid $2,000 a month, and after my bills, I had a sum of $300, let's just say. Well, how much am I spending on my wants, right? On my usual expenses, like going out with my friends, or going to the movies, or going to grab dinner, or going for coffee, whatever it was. So I needed to check my bank statements and see what is it that I'm spending money on all the time. And so there was always Starbucks. So as you can see, Starbucks was on there. I had expenses again for Amazon, just shopping for stuff, and a lot of food. There was a lot of food expenses for me, and because I would eat out a lot, and it wasn't like cheap stuff neither. I would go to like really expensive, healthy, organic places, and one time stop for one of those is like at least $25 for a meal, and it's expensive. And so once I saw that my wants expenses were like $500, I was like, okay, well, I'm negative. And that's usually why I struggle to pay my bills on time. It's a sad truth, but it is a truth. And we need to face that and be able to express that to our partner. So he can help me out with that if I need help. And once I saw his expenses, again, they were super low. His needs, they were super low too. He had expenses here and there, but it was a minimum. And he still had a little bit of a little leftover money, which was funny because I was a big earner. I was a breadwinner. And because my expenses were so huge, I always came out negative at the end of the month versus him. Even though he earned less money, his expenses were so much less, so he had a little bit of extra every single month. So just by me telling you that, you already knew that I wasn't really saving any money because I couldn't. I was behind on some bills, plenty of bills actually, and I was buying a lot of unnecessary stuff. And those are the key things that you must be able to identify at the end of this. So it's really going to be a whole analysis, and you're going to be able to break everything down and just say, okay, where do we need to work on? What do we need to do to fix this? And one of the easiest things that you can do is stop spending money on dumb stuff. And I use that for lack of, better terms, because I would say something way worse, but that's just what it comes down to. If you are spending money on things that you don't need, you don't need to go to Starbucks 7 times a week. You don't. And again, it's just, if we're going to be spending that money, like, we can't be complaining, but that's just a whole nother subject. Sorry for getting carried away. It's the truth. But, when I identified that about myself, and he knew because I exposed myself to it and I let him see that, then it was like, okay, like, I need to find a way again to get rid of this. So I stopped doing my shopping online. And every time I was going to buy a coffee, I thought about it twice. I said, is it a necessity or is it a want? And I had to weigh those things out and then say, okay, this is definitely a want. Do I need it? Not really. Like, it's just to make me feel comfortable, and it's just there to, make me feel a part of my routine. And I need to break that habit and break that routine. So that's what I started doing. So I do have a lot of couples that message me and will ask me, hey, what is one of the first things that you can recommend us to learn about or to just focus on so that we can prevent as many mistakes as we can? And I always just open up to them and tell them, hey, please invest in learning about financial education. Get down to writing all of these expenses down, how much you earn, what you're spending your money on. But not only that, another thing that is so important is also assigning who is going to be paying what bills. So when it comes to finances, in order to stay on track, you have to be able to make sure that those bills are getting paid on time. And that is where I made a lot of mistakes as well. So I would just have Mario randomly pay certain bills and I would pay for other bills. And it was just random. So like whoever called in to get it installed, that's who eventually was in charge of it. But after we were married, I realized, wow, if it's not automatically deducted from our bank account, we're always late. So we literally had our electricity and our gas shut off many times, like I think between 3 to 5 times. And it sucked, especially because you're recently married and you're on your honeymoon stage, and getting shut off is like, oh, it's embarrassing. And not only that, like you have to go to work, but anyhow. So I just remember that I was like, okay, if he's going to forget, if I'm going to forget, like one of us has to be responsible for this. And Mauro was always the type to be like, hey, I don't want anything to do with finances. Like, I am not mindful about it. I will forget to pay things if they don't automatically get deducted from my bank account. And so I was like, okay, so let's just have you be in charge of, paying your half of the rent. I pay my half of the rent. I'll pay the bills where I have to walk into the actual store to pay for them. And you can make sure to just manage the ones that are being deducted from your bank account on a monthly basis. So that is what we did, and it helped a lot. Now, remember that I am not a financial expert whatsoever. So please, I am just giving you my opinion, my way of doing things. And if this helps you in a way, take whatever you can use. I am not an expert in finances. So if you're interested in looking for that type of help, Google somebody, because I'm not the person, but I am giving you my perspective of things, the way things helped me and my husband, and what didn't work for us also. So assigning those bills is very important. Now, I'm just going to do a quick overview. Number one, make sure you have the conversation of how much money we are bringing in, how much do we get paid. Number two is, what are our expenses? Separating them from our needs, our wants, and everything else. And also assigning the bills. So making sure everybody knows who's paying what, who's in charge of it, and honestly being aware of, are we good at this? Are we not? Should we seek a third party? If you want to do it between you two, and one of you is better with finances, then have that person take care of it, because that is going to save you a lot of money, a lot of late fees, a lot of hardships, a lot of mistakes. And there are things that I made so many mistakes on in my past, even before I met Mario, that are still affecting me today. And I'm working on fixing those things. But the sooner we're able to get educated on finances, the sooner you will prevent from making these mistakes and causing you debt in most cases and bad credit scores and all of that. So that is honestly what I want to touch upon, and I hope that you received plenty of information. I know I'm not really going too much in depth with doing breakdowns of how we did this, but I'm giving you the information of how we did it, like just general information, because I didn't want to make this video too long of what it already is, and just giving you some of the basic stuff. Quick bonus tip before I leave you is to make sure that you pay yourself first before anybody else. Well, God first, then yourself, and then your bills. I promise you that that is one of the best things that we ever did. We didn't start doing this up until a few weeks ago, where we said, you know what? We have to change our lifestyle. We have to change the way we are doing things. And I will make another video on that. We have moved a few times already, and each move was to a completely different location, complete different area, complete different monthly rate for rent. And we even moved into a very expensive loft because we wanted to make it our workspace, and we thought it was a great investment. But we learned so much from that, and I want to make a video about that so you guys can see how we moved and eventually now where we're at, why we made those decisions. But that is going to be on a different video, which will also be related to finances, and I hope that will also help you. Stay tuned for that one. But thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that this served you and your necessities. And if you're looking at this video, it's obviously because you're probably struggling with finances right now between your marriage or your relationship, or you're about to get married, you're about to go into this relationship and co-live with somebody, and you need some advice for this. So I really want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I know it was a bit long. I do apologize for that, but when it comes to finances, there is a lot to touch on, and I really just touched super superficially on things. But again, thank you so much for watching, and please stay tuned for my next video. I also have a podcast that is called Defying the Odds, and you can download it on Spotify or iTunes through iPhone, and you'll find it there. Again, my name is Muriel Zagara, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Stay tuned, guys. See you later.